Hello, rock and roll daycare community. It is your curriculum director, Barbara. It is Tuesday, which means it is our Tuesday Training Tools Day. And as always, I hope everyone's having a great start to their week. We are in the month of June, already in week 3, which is so crazy. And our theme this month is the prepared environment. So, our first week, we talked about the material making checklist and why it is important. Why? Why do we use it? And you all had these great responses as to why. It helps with independence for the child. It keeps the environment orderly so children can navigate with more success. And then in our second week, we kind of went into, well, how often do you use it? We now know it's important. How often are you using it on a daily basis? And this was an interesting response. A lot of you reached out to me personally, which I loved. And really the general like feel of all those answers was we're not using it as much as we used to, or we would like, or that we are planning to do as we move forward. And I first want to say thank you because I read every single one of your answers. Um, some of you didn't know what it was, and that's fair because you're new and you're still learning, or and then some are maybe not using it because we're still coming out of COVID, and we realize that coming out of COVID and jumping back into normalcy isn't going to happen overnight. And this is why we do Tuesday Training Tools, and we review our resources that we have to kind of remind you, yeah, we did this when we had our classrooms before the COVID curriculum. And so our goal, and we know you're so hungry and wanting this goal so bad, is to get the classrooms back into the way they were set up prior to COVID. Getting away from the individual shelves, bringing back in wooden materials. But with this and with the changes, we have to remember our resources. So week 3 is actually going to be, again, third time's a charm, about material making checklists. Because what I want to do this week, and perhaps this is what I should have done the first week, is to actually just go over it as a reminder and as an example, because I just think this refresher will be really good. And it's that important that I'm actually switching my training schedule to go over it for a third time, because this resource is really a non-negotiable. You have to be using it every time you put out a material. And I very rarely have strict quote unquote rules about our curriculum. I think that's what makes us so special, is that we have this creative approach to early education, and that we want your input, your observations, your creativity a part of the curriculum. And the way we can do that, because I've said this in the previous weeks, to make sure that we're keeping up with our philosophy, that all the works that you're designing and bringing into the classroom are in alignment with our philosophy and also up to our expectations. And so to make that easy for you, and to make sure we're not coming around and giving feedback or nitpicking or any of that, because no one likes that, right? We created these resources so you can help self-guide yourself, and you can, again, it's like your ticket to, like, okay, you have an idea, great, run with that idea. We want you to bring those wonderful observations and insights and infuse those into your classroom. All you have to do is follow this checklist. Okay, so let's go ahead and just go over a couple of things all together, so we're all on the same page. So whether you've been here for 7 years or you are brand new, let's just review it. So you may remember this. This is called the building a lesson plan. If you have you been with um, rock and roll daycare, you have seen this, or on the Nanny Share side of things. I have presented this multiple times. This is part of your onboarding if you are a new teacher, but I brought it up because I wanted to use this lesson as an example. Since it's in this presentation already and it's something you are familiar with, let's just go back to Feed the Frog. This is a nice little DIY work that could be used mostly for the toddler environment. But I like to use this because it's simple, it's straightforward, it's not rocket science, and I want to then bring it back to the material making checklist. So to set the stage, let's use this. Let's pretend you are a teacher and you came up with this idea. I saw this idea. I was inspired by it, and it's called Feed the Frog. I know my toddlers love to open and close things. I know they love to put things in and out. They like to talk about bugs. So this is really just a perfect work that I want to see in my environment based on my observations. Okay. Perfect. Lovely. You went through everything in the building a lesson plan, and then you get to the point where you have to assemble the work and put it on your shelf. So let's jump over here to our material making checklist. And by the way, if you have not gotten this presentation yet, the building a lesson plan, please ask your program specialist or director to review this with you, because this is really, really important. It is, again, part of the onboarding. So maybe you just haven't gotten to that portion yet, but really, really important that you understand every single step of building a lesson plan, and the material making checklist. Oops, let me see here, is part of it. So we're back to material making checklist. Okay, so let's talk. So Feed the Frog. I have all my materials. I got that Parmesan cheese. I think that's what it looks like, a Parmesan cheese shaker that I cleaned up, and I glued on the googly eyes on the top so it looks like a frog when I open and close the mouth. I ordered the 3D insects that I'm going to feed the frog. And I have my trays and my small basket ready to go. Now I'm going to assemble it using this checklist to put it on the shelf. So the first thing we want to make sure is, does the work have a direct aim or a learning objective? We want to make sure every lesson that we're putting on our shelves has a purpose. That would be really important. So we're going to look at our learning objective PDF that you use to help guide your curriculums to say, okay, what's the direct aim? What's the learning objective? What's the purpose of this work? And really, there's a couple purposes, right? The first one that comes to my mind is the fine motor. They're opening and closing the little mouth. They maybe are unscrewing the top. They are picking up those little insects and popping them in. And there's just so many fine motor movements in that alone that would be the first one that came up. And another one that comes up for me is, around the language development. We're naming different insects and maybe talking about descriptive characteristics of those insects and what color they are. So there could be a lot of language involved in this work. Maybe it's accounting work. We're just counting the bugs as we're putting them in the frog. One frog. 1, 2, 3. I think you get the point. Okay. So those are just really quick overview, like 3 learning objectives that just come to mind when I think of Feed the Frog. So a lot of purposeful, nice, meaningful learning that can go into this specific lesson. Okay, so the work must support CCOI. There is a video in your onboarding called CCOI, which stands for Coordination, Concentration, Order, and Independence. I am not going to go over CCOI specifically, but if you do need a refresher on it, or if this is something that you've never heard of, again, please contact your program director. Program specialist, so you can rewatch the training video on CCOI and get a good grasp as to what it means and why it's important. Going back to Feed the Frog, this supports CCOI, the coordination. Again, we're talking about all those movements that we're doing with our hands in terms of opening and closing and unscrewing and putting the bugs in. Concentration will be built because this lesson was built off of the fact that these toddlers or the children in your classroom were interested in putting things in and out and opening and closing things and liking bugs. So if they're interested in it, it is going to grasp their attention, which is going to help lengthen their concentration naturally because they are naturally drawn to it. There's nothing much else we have to do because we used our observations to determine that this is something that they are going to enjoy to work with. Order, we're going to get down to this in the next couple of bullets, but it is going to be set up orderly so the child can engage with it and that it is neat and they can be, working with it independently, which leads us to our last one, I, independence. That again, they can be engaging with it independently, and it's also help to strengthen those independent skills. Okay, so CCOI and must support CCOI. I always like to just point out that majority of the works, if you're making them and following this checklist, will follow CCOI. The only one I just like to give the red flag on, especially for the teachers and guides to our younger children, are really battery operated toys. Battery operated toys are used as entertainment. They press a button, something lights up, and it is entertaining a child. It is allowing the child be passive, and we want active learners. There is nothing, a child has to engage with the Feed the Frog work. It is doing nothing back to them. And that is a good thing. We don't, because with these battery operated toys, it is breaking concentration, and again, just acting as an entertainment tool versus something that's going to be, helping the child be an active learner. Okay, so just that's again, another quick point about the battery operated toys, why we don't have them, because they don't follow CCOI. But back to Feed the Frog. Okay, so next bullet point, the work is contained. So if I'm thinking of this work, this Feed the Frog, where I know I have this Parmesan shaker that I turned into a frog and all my bugs, I'm thinking that's going to live on a tray. It really wouldn't be orderly if I put it in a basket. So I'm going to find a tray that's not going to be too big because it's just too small, not a huge thing that I have to put on the tray, and something that will fit on my shelf. And I'm going to put it on a tray. Okay. Materials on the tray are set up left to right. So think about how you want the child to work with this. So I'm going to kind of turn this way. So pretend I should have had a tray. I'm sorry. Actually, let's pretend this is our tray. Oh, where'd I go? Back. Okay. This is our tray. So I'm holding it. So if I want the child to take the bugs and put it into the container, I would want the bugs on the left side of the tray. And then so they would be doing the movement to the right. Okay. And it's really important that we remember this detail, because that's actually a precursor to reading. Everything is left to right in writing. So we just like to have them practice this in all the works that we're setting up. Things are set up from left to right. Whatever they're starting with is on the left, and where it's ending is on the right. Okay. It is designed to support independence. Sometimes this control of error, maybe I'll highlight this red or change the color, can get a little tricky. And that's really more for our preschool teachers, that we're setting up in a way that, the child, that there is that control of error so they can have more independence. So in terms of, when I think of that, I think of if we're doing a pouring work, a control of error would be to give a very little amount of liquid, because if they did spill it, it's not going to be a big, oh my goodness, and they, a big to do really. So we controlled that. And so this doesn't apply to all works. And if you can't think of something that you can help control with that error, don't worry about it. That's why I'm going to put it in red. Really just focus that it's designed to support independence, that we're setting it up in a way that's really going to allow the child to engage with the work on their own. Okay. So the next one is it's orderly. So everything has a place. This is where we talk about Feed the Frog. I want you to think of those little insects. You bought that, that tube of insects on Amazon, and it came in, and, the insects look great and you're super excited about it. But we're not just going to pour those insects all over the tray. We want to find a small basket or a small container that kind of matches everything else, to put all those bugs in, so it has a place. So if you're looking at the tray, everything would have a place. The little frog, he stands alone, so he doesn't need anything, but the bugs do. So they would go in that little basket to the left of the frog. This next one, color coded. I'm going to highlight this one too, because this one could be more of a preschool work as well. And maybe there is some confusion there. This is why I want to go over it point by point. So this could be I'll have program specialists work with preschool teachers around this, but this could be for maybe different sorting works or some higher level works that it would help if things were color coded to help with that independence. Okay, moving along. I want to make sure all paper is laminated. The goal is that when we make a work, we don't want it to be getting just, easily destroyed. And we know that younger children love to explore things in different ways. And sometimes that is a destructive way. So laminating paper, A, makes a work look a lot neater, but B, also just helps with, any tearing or crinkling or anything that would make the work look a little more sloppy. And also allows you to reuse a work that you have already made. So you're not having to reinvent the wheel every time you want to, come up with a lesson about insects or bees or whatever it is that's, probably going to be a reoccurring theme that comes up in your observations while watching the children. So paper's laminated, straight edges, again, it really makes a difference when things are nice and neat, and straight edges is a part of that. really encourage that the text, if you have text, so there's no text for Feed the Frog. But if I'm thinking of maybe I'm doing a sorting work with big and small objects, with my text, maybe I would have it printed out the words big in big font and then the small in small font, as an extra cue for them to help with that sorting process. But I would want to make sure that is printed. The only exception is if you are gifted with beautiful handwriting, then it looks very neat. Then okay, if you're artistic and that's great. I am not. I have the worst handwriting you've ever seen, so I have to make sure that I print everything. And so that would be something you would consider if there were labels involved in a lesson that you were putting on the shelf. Okay, replenish plans. So this one I always use the example of a sticker work that maybe you have on your shelf. Okay, so we'll get away from the Feed the Frog for a moment and talk about a sticker work. Sticker works are a great fine motor activity for young children. And the way you would set up on a tray, if I was going through this material making checklist, is to put one sheet of stickers on the left side, right? Because that's where they were going left to right. And then one piece of paper on the right side. So when they walk up, it's really clear that they're just peeling the sticker and they're putting it on the paper. If you had a whole book of stickers, that would be really overwhelming for a child. And if you had like a lot of paper, maybe it would distract them into doing something that was not the purpose of the work. And maybe there'd be so many stickers, they would start to feel overwhelmed and they would start to put them on the table or the wall. And that's not the goal of that work. But when we can simplify it and minimize what's on the tray, it's very clear to the child at that point of, oh, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do with it. So you'd have one sticker sheet and one piece of paper. Really easy. But what happens when a child uses that? They go up to the tray and they bring it to the table and they do the stickers and they get all excited. They show you and maybe you guide them to put it in their backpack to bring home or you hang it on the artboard. But then the tray's empty. It's not ready for the next child. This is where replenish plans comes in. So if you have a work like this where there is like an end product that gets taken away from the tray and then belongs to the child or belongs to the artboard, you need to have a plan of how you replenish that so it can still satisfy obviously the learning objective and the purpose of that lesson. And that's something you would want to do with your co-teacher of, okay, I'm going to put the extra sticker sheets and the extra piece of paper up here in this cabinet. So when the child's done, I can easily grab one and one back on the tray and back on the shelf it goes. As children get older and a little more independent, those replenish plans can actually just be on top of the shelf. So you could have some more stickers and some more piece of paper, then they would independently have to take it off and put one and one on the tray as part of their work cycle. But that would be more for the preschool side. And based on your observations, if the children are capable of doing that in an independent fashion, because we would just want it to be, something that kind of just goes smoothly to help replenish. So that's what means by replenish plans. With the frog, when they put the insects in the Mr. Frog's mouth and then take them out, those bugs go right back in the basket. So there's nothing to replenish. Nothing is going away from the tray. So that doesn't necessarily apply to every work. So maybe that one could even be highlighted red, that this is not one for every work. Okay. But in the instance where there is a final product at the end of that lesson, that something would have to be replenished. Okay. Other examples of that could be practical life lessons. If you're, doing a pouring lesson and the child has spilt a couple times, they cleaned up the water, but when they put back the tray on the shelf with the two things and there was no liquid in there, you'd want to replenish that water so it was ready for the next child to engage in that pouring work. Okay. So a few examples of what replenish plans look like in the reason and the importance behind them. And then we want to make sure there's a minimal amount of items on the tray. So only what is needed to accomplish the learning objective. Okay. So a lot of times, and I'll go back to Feed the Frog. That's why I use it as an example. When you order, like when I said we ordered those 3D bugs and they came in the tube, I don't know, that's what I thought of when I first, when I think of this lesson. But even if you just order 3D bugs from anywhere, there's a good chance that the quantity of that is in that tube or what it was sent is more than you need on the tray. So just remember, anytime you order something from Amazon and you buy something from the store, it's your your job as the guide, the teacher, to sort through it, to really make sure that you're putting a minimal amount. So not too little where it's not going to be engaging, but also not too much where it becomes messy and overwhelming. And if, and then maybe it is very tempting for the child to just dump the materials because there's so many. So know that you want to be really mindful of how many objects you're putting on the tray for a work, and maybe which ones. And it's not just a simple, okay, I ordered the insects and now I'm simply just going to plop them into this lesson. Take the time to really think about it, and just think the minimal amount that they would need, that it wouldn't be too little, but just enough to keep them engaged, yet keep everything orderly. And then last, we just want it to be welcoming and pleasing and inviting to the child, something that's really engaging, that when they walk up to it, they are excited to see the work and be like, oh, what's this? Let me discover it. Let me check it out. And going through this whole checklist, you should be able to get to this final bullet point with a lot of success and ease. Okay. So there you have it. We are on week 3 of material making checklists. And like I said, kind of wish I did this backwards, but I work off of your feedback. Just like, you as the teacher works off of your children's feedback and what you're giving. The responses from last week were a refresher would be nice. And that's always a good thing, especially when we're coming out of COVID. That's why we're here. We're not here to try to catch you. Oh, are you not using these? No, I just want to get a gauge of, if you're not, that's fine. And I thank you for the feedback when you said, I'm not using them because I don't know them, I'm new, or I haven't used them since before COVID. That's really fine. Again, I understand we are coming out of it, but now here is your 3rd week of material making checklist. So really encourage, now that we've gone over it line by line, to now everyone will be on the same page, whether you're a director, program specialist, teacher, new teacher, old teacher, whatever it is, everyone's on the same page. These are the same exact checklists that every single rock and roll daycare teacher or nanny uses before putting their works on the shelf. So again, just like I had said in previous weeks, I really encourage you to print these out. They should be living in your curriculum binders. And I know some of you are revamping your curriculum binders and reorganizing them. So they're kind of in this mid stage of not truly functional, but they will be soon. And I think that's awesome. I love that you're taking the time to get these back up and running and in a way that's going to be functional for you. And part of that curriculum binder is a hard copy of this material making checklist, for the reason that you don't have to be searching on a drive. You can just take out your curriculum binder, open it, and say, here it is. And if I go around to any of the works or materials in my classroom, it should be satisfying the needs on this list. And again, it's not to be that we're nitpicky or, we have, these standards because, this is what we feel like having. These standards in this checklist is truly for the child. It's so the child can really engage in the work successfully, which then in turn helps your classroom management because they're able to be independent within the classroom and engage in the environment independently versus having everything be teacher directed and you having to do everything for them or have, a lot of activities that you have to then provide. That creates a really stressful, and just an environment where the child also becomes very reliable on the adults. But that's another Tuesday training tool. I can't get into that now. So, but what we can just focus on is, again, the importance of making sure the materials are ready and that we are taking the time to go through it and that you have the full understanding of these checklists. So they are not anything new or something that maybe lived just before COVID. And to state that this will be the expectation moving forward as we get our classrooms back to the pre-COVID classroom design and getting our materials that we had to say goodbye to during COVID, but can now be reintroducing. So yeah, there it is, week 3 of material making checklist. So important. And I can't thank you enough for all your responses. This is why I want to engage in this conversation with you. And I really, really appreciated the feedback and everything that you all shared last week. So we have going backwards, starting with today, what it is, line by line, detail by detail material making checklist, how, really reflecting how often am I using it, which should be anytime I'm putting a work out. That should be the answer. Anytime I'm making a new work or bringing a new lesson into my classroom, I'm putting on the shelf, I'm using the material making checklist. And then lastly, the importance, which is how we started off this month. Why are they important? Why do we do them? And you all supplied the answers for that. Okay. So I don't know if we're going to go for week 4 next week. We'll have to find out, but I don't think so. I think we'll have a different theme unless I get different feedback about it. But take time in looking at these materials in the classroom. And I promise you, the reason we do this pre-work with, setting up our materials is so our classrooms can run smoother. So we are prepared. And that's why we call it the prepared environment. Back to our monthly theme. So thank you, everyone, not anyone. Thank you, everyone. Any questions you have, of course, you can ask your center directors, your program specialists, and I am also available as a resource as well. I want you to feel supported, and I want you, to feel like you can share any feedback or, if you have any hesitations about how you're engaging with these resources, so we can help improve that and to make it more successful for you and your learning environments. And I hope you all have a great week, and I will see you next week for our next training session of Tuesday Training Tools. Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.